In medieval times, beauty wasn't just about looking nice, it could change how people treated you. What counted as beautiful back then was often odd, sometimes hard to follow, but always taken seriously. In medieval Europe, having pale white skin was the ultimate beauty standard for the wealthy and noble. Unlike today, where many people desire a sun-kissed tan, medieval nobility went to extraordinary lengths to maintain skin so pale it was almost translucent. Why? Because it clearly demonstrated that you didn't have to work outside in the fields under the hot sun like common peasants. Your ghostly complexion was essentially a walking billboard announcing your high status. Noble women took this paleness quest to extreme levels. They would hide under parasols, wear large hats with veils, and sometimes rarely leave their chambers during summer months just to avoid any hint of color touching their precious faces. Some historical records show that certain noble women would only venture outdoors before dawn or after sunset to prevent sun exposure. Windows in castle bedchambers were sometimes covered with thin fabric to filter the sunlight that entered. The truly dedicated used makeup made from white lead, yes, actual lead, the toxic metal, to paint their faces an even more ghostly white. They were literally dying to be beautiful, which gives a whole new meaning to fashion victim. Women who used these concoctions regularly suffered hair loss, rotting teeth, and damaged skin. Many experienced tremors, kidney failure, and sometimes fatal lead poisoning. Their makeup routine was basically apply to face, wait 20 years, apply to coffin. Despite knowing about these effects, the practice continued for centuries because the social benefits of looking pale outweighed the known health risks. Queen Elizabeth I of England was perhaps the most famous example of this beauty trend. She became known for her white mask of youth that grew thicker as she aged. By her later years, her face reportedly had almost an inch of white lead makeup, creating deep cracks when she smiled or frowned. Most noble women avoided washing their faces properly, leaving toxic cosmetics on their skin constantly and simply adding fresh layers on top. Those who couldn't afford lead but still wanted the pale look had alternatives: milk baths, face masks made from breadcrumbs soaked in rosewater, or pastes made from ground-up eggshells. Some even used leeches on their faces and necks to drain blood and appear paler. Talk about sucking the life out of your beauty routine. The theory was that removing blood from the face would create the desired pallor that signified nobility. Meanwhile, working-class people had their own versions of this beauty standard. Though they couldn't achieve the extreme paleness of the nobility, they occasionally used flour or chalk dust for special occasions like weddings or festivals, imitating as best they could the beauty standards they saw in paintings and heard about in stories. For them, it wasn't about looking wealthy so much as looking special for important events. While the nobility was busy avoiding the sun and applying toxic face paint, the working class had a very different idea of what made a body beautiful. For regular folks in medieval times, beauty wasn't defined by delicate features or slender frames. It was all about looking like you could survive winter, famine, and hard labor. In villages and farms across Europe, the most attractive person wasn't the one with the perfect face, but the one strong enough to haul water, chop wood, and still have energy left to dance at the harvest festival. The original strong is the new sexy movement started with medieval peasants, centuries before fitness influencers discovered protein shakes. Physical evidence from archaeological digs tells us a lot about medieval bodies. A fascinating study of medieval skeletons shows that the average peasant man had arm bones significantly stronger than modern professional athletes, especially on their right sides from constant tool use. These men developed asymmetrical strength from years of swinging scythes, hammers, and plows in the same motion. These guys didn't need gym memberships. Their daily chores would make today's CrossFit instructors weep into their protein shakers. The ideal male body had broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a strong back. All signs that he could work from dawn until dusk without faltering. Women weren't looking for lean physiques or six-pack abs, but rather evidence of endurance and practical strength. A man who could lift a fallen tree or help raise a barn wall wasn't just attractive, he was husband material in a world where survival depended on physical capability. Women were held to similarly practical standards of physical beauty. A woman who could carry 2 heavy water buckets uphill without stopping was admired throughout the village. Historical records showed that young men would often observe potential wives performing tasks to assess their strength and stamina before proposing marriage. Thin, delicate women weren't considered beautiful. They were concerning. Could she survive childbirth? Could she work the fields if her husband got sick? Would she be able to carry and nurse healthy children? Medieval dating profiles would have listed, "can thresh wheat for 8 hours straight," under desirable qualities rather than favorite books or movies. Medieval writings give us clues about these beauty standards. The ideal peasant woman was described as having strong arms, a straight back, and firm hands in poems and stories. One 14th century poem praises a miller's daughter for lifting a sack of grain with ease, not exactly what you'd find in today's love songs. The medieval equivalent of swiping right was noticing someone could plow a straighter furrow than their neighbors or carry more cheese wheels to market without resting. Those calloused hands that modern beauty influencers would rush to moisturize? In villages, they were badges of honor, showing you worked hard and were reliable. Soft, uncalloused hands meant you were either nobility, unlikely in a village, or lazy, definitely not attractive. Rough hands were basically medieval LinkedIn. They showed your work experience at a glance. While strong bodies were essential for survival and considered attractive across all working classes, there was one feature that transcended social boundaries. Hair was perhaps the great equalizer in medieval beauty standards. Whether you lived in a castle or a one-room hut, having beautiful hair could make you stand out and enhance your attractiveness. For women especially, long, flowing locks were considered their crowning glory, and sometimes their most prized physical feature. In a world without selfies or profile pictures, your hair was your walking advertisement. Basically, your medieval profile picture. Medieval people believed hair revealed a great deal about someone's character, age, and health. Thick, shiny hair meant vitality and youth, while thinning or dull hair suggested illness or advanced age. Most women grew their hair as long as their genetics would allow, sometimes reaching all the way to their knees or ankles in extreme cases. Unmarried young women often wore their hair loose as a symbol of their innocence and availability for marriage, while married women typically covered theirs with veils, hoods, or elaborate headdresses as a sign of modesty. Getting married meant saying goodbye to showing off your hair and hello to a lifetime of hat hair and headdress headaches. For the wealthy, hair care was an elaborate ritual. Noble ladies had servants dedicated to washing and styling their precious tresses, sometimes spending hours each day on hair maintenance. They used combs carved from ivory or boxwood with teeth spaced closely together on one side to catch lice and nits, because even the fanciest people had bugs in their hair back then. Having someone pick lice from your hair was basically medieval Netflix and chill, a social grooming activity that could last hours. Special boxes were made just for storing these expensive combs, which were sometimes decorated with gems or precious metals. Kings and queens might have had golden thrones, but they still had itchy scalps like everyone else, just with fancier tools to scratch them. The pursuit of blonde hair was particularly intense among nobility. To achieve the coveted golden hue, wealthy women used mixtures containing everything from saffron, extremely expensive, to horse urine, extremely disgusting. Some even soaked their hair in lye, a caustic substance used in making soap, before sitting in the sun for hours, a process that often left their scalps burned and their hair damaged. Their version of "maybe she's born with it" was definitely "no, it's horse pee and chemical burns." The risks were considered worth taking, as blonde hair was associated with youth, purity, and the revered images of angels and the Virgin Mary in religious artwork. While beautiful hair framed the face, it was the condition of one's skin that truly revealed everything about your health, character, and even your moral standing in medieval society. Medieval people had a unique understanding of skin that went far beyond mere appearance. They believed the face was like an open book revealing the balance of 4 humors inside your body: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Having clear, unblemished skin wasn't just about looking good. It meant your entire body was in perfect balance, indicating both physical health and moral virtue. Your face was basically a medieval medical chart that everyone could read, showing everything from your diet to your temperament to your spiritual state. Medical texts from the period taught that pimples, rashes, or skin discoloration weren't just cosmetic problems, but serious indications that something was wrong with your internal health. A person with clear skin was assumed to have good character and proper self-control over their diet, emotions, and even thoughts. Someone with skin problems, they were believed to have sinful thoughts inappropriate emotional outbursts, or to have eaten too many hot foods that disrupted their humors. If acne existed today like it did then, teenagers would be considered the most morally corrupt people in society, their hormonal breakouts interpreted as evidence of terrible character flaws rather than normal development. The ideal complexion was precisely balanced, neither too pale, which meant sickness, nor too red, which suggested anger, drunkenness, or overheating. Instead, a gentle rosy glow on the cheeks was considered perfect, particularly for women. Finding that perfect middle ground was harder than a peasant trying to get an audience with the king. You need to look healthy but not overheated, well-rested but not lazy, passionate but not angry. Medieval beauty influencers would have had videos called How to Look Like You've Never Had a Single Emotion, teaching viewers to maintain that perfectly neutral, slightly rosy complexion that suggested perfect internal balance. Beyond facial appearance, medieval beauty standards also had strong preferences for body shape and size. Turn on the TV today and you might think thin has always been the beauty ideal, but crack open a medieval art book and you'll see a very different story. In the Middle Ages, having some serious curves wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated and considered the peak of feminine beauty. If medieval people time traveled to see our modern diet industry, they'd be very confused about why everyone was trying to look like they had the plague. Look at any medieval painting of beautiful women, from religious works depicting holy figures to romantic scenes in illuminated manuscripts, and you'll notice rounded bellies, full hips, and ample bosoms. This wasn't just an artistic style or the result of heavy clothing. It reflected what people actually found attractive. In a time when food shortages and disease were common threats, having a fuller figure meant you were healthy, well-fed, and likely from a family with resources. Thinness wasn't associated with discipline or fashion, as it often is today. It usually meant you were poor, sick, or both. The first diet book in medieval times would have been titled How to Gain Weight and Influence People. For noble ladies, a slightly rounded belly was particularly prized. This might seem odd by modern standards, but it symbolized fertility and the blessing of potential motherhood, a crucial quality for women whose primary social role was producing heirs. Some medieval fashion actually emphasized this feature, with high-waisted dresses designed to make the stomach appear more prominent. The medieval equivalent of Instagram filters was just eating another serving of meat pie. Women today might suck in for photos. Medieval women might have pushed their bellies out to appear more fashionably fertile. While the shape of the body was important, noble women were even more obsessed with another feature. If you thought today's beauty trends involving injections and fillers were extreme, medieval noblewomen literally changed the shape of their faces to keep up with fashion. One of the strangest beauty standards of the period was the obsession with high foreheads. The higher, the better. A towering forehead was seen as a mark of elegance, intelligence, and noble birth. If medieval nobles could see today's Botox injections, they'd probably think, "That's nice, but have you tried removing half your hair permanently?" This trend was so intense that women would pluck or shave their hairlines back by inches. Yes, intentionally giving themselves receding hairlines. This wasn't just a slight adjustment. Some went to the extreme of removing hair halfway up their scalps. Paintings from the 14th and 15th centuries show women with foreheads that take up nearly a third of their faces, a look achieved through painful and permanent hair removal that often left scarring. Male pattern baldness wasn't a problem back then. It was a fashion statement that women were trying to copy with painful dedication. The tools used for this process were hardly sophisticated by modern standards. Women used metal tweezers, painful waxing with sticky substances, or rubbed their hairlines with harsh chemicals and cat feces believed to inhibit hair growth. These ladies were literally scratching their heads trying to remove their hairlines. Talk about a hair-raising beauty standard. The pain involved must have been excruciating, but as they say, beauty is pain. And medieval beauty was apparently a 5-hour plucking session followed by a cat poop scalp treatment. Moving from the top of the head downward, another facial feature commanded significant attention in medieval beauty standards. Open wide and say, "Ah," because medieval folks cared about teeth more than you might expect. In a world without dentists, orthodontists, or minty fresh toothpaste, having a decent smile took work and a bit of luck, and people developed some creative methods to keep their teeth in order. Dental care was basically wing it until your teeth fall out, then buy someone else's. a far cry from our modern world of whitening strips and electric toothbrushes. First, forget everything you know about perfect Hollywood smiles. Medieval beauty standards for teeth weren't about having a perfectly straight, blindingly white grin. Instead, the ideal was simply having most of your teeth relatively straight and not completely rotten or black with decay. The bar was so low you could trip over it, but still, many people couldn't clear it. In medieval beauty pageants, the talent portion would have been just opening your mouth and having more than 5 teeth still intact. Historical records show that by age 30, many people had already lost multiple teeth to decay or gum disease. One feature that might surprise modern dental patients, having a small gap between your front teeth, was actually considered very attractive and was called the lover's window or door of paradise in poetry. This little space was thought to suggest sensuality, an open nature, and even generosity. Some medieval love poems specifically mention this feature, comparing the gap to a doorway to the heart or suggesting it indicated a passionate nature. People who weren't naturally blessed with this feature sometimes filed their teeth to create the desired space, an early and painful form of cosmetic dentistry. Today, we spend thousands fixing gaps. Back then, they were creating them, proving that no matter the era, people will pay good money to look the opposite of how they naturally look. Beyond what you could see, medieval attraction involved another sense entirely. In a world without deodorant, daily showers, or washing machines, smelling pleasant was a serious achievement and an important part of being considered attractive. Medieval people may not have bathed as often as we do today, but that doesn't mean they were okay with stinking. When your dating pool was limited to one village, you didn't want to be known as the stinky one who cleared the tavern whenever you walked in. Contrary to popular belief, medieval people weren't completely against bathing as is often portrayed. Public bathhouses were common in towns and cities until the plague years of the 14th century, when people became suspicious that shared bathing spread disease, which, to be fair, it sometimes did. Even after bathhouses fell out of favor, people still washed their hands, faces, and private areas regularly using basins of water. Full-body immersion baths happened less frequently, maybe a few times a year for average folks, more often for the wealthy. Their version of a spa day was, I'll wash my whole body this month instead of just the smelly parts, which by modern standards isn't great, but was perfectly normal for the time. Because regular bathing wasn't always possible or practical, people got creative about managing body odor. Wealthy people wore clothes made of linen underneath their outer garments because linen could be washed more easily and frequently than wool or silk. They would change these undergarments when they became smelly rather than bathing their entire bodies. It was basically the medieval version of the sniff test. If your shirt could stand up by itself, it was time for a change. While physical attributes like smell, teeth, and skin were important, medieval beauty standards extended beyond the body to include something modern people might not consider part of appearance at all. In medieval times, beauty wasn't just skin deep. How you behaved was considered just as important as how you looked. For women especially, modesty and proper conduct were seen as beautiful qualities that could make even an ordinary-looking person more attractive. Beauty wasn't just being pretty, it was being pretty quiet about it too. Character and deportment were considered reflections of inner beauty, which was thought to be even more important than external appearance in religious medieval society. The ideal behavior varied by social class, but some elements were universal. A woman was expected to speak softly, move gracefully, and show proper respect to her superiors. Noble girls spent years learning to glide rather than walk, keep their eyes downcast in the presence of men, and master the art of speaking just loudly enough to be heard, but not so loudly as to seem aggressive or forward. Medieval charm school was basically how to act like you don't exist while still being decorative. 101. Girls as young as 7 would begin training in proper posture, with some noble households using wooden boards strapped to their backs to ensure they didn't slouch. Medieval conduct books, essentially the etiquette guides of their day, gave detailed instructions on proper feminine behavior. One 15th century guide advised women to laugh without showing teeth and to walk with small steps and not too quickly. Another suggested that a truly beautiful woman should speak only when spoken to and keep her hands folded gently at her waist when standing. Following all these rules must have been exhausting. Imagine trying to eat soup without slurping, walk without bouncing, or sneeze without making noise. In a society so deeply shaped by faith, proper behavior naturally extended into religious expression. In a society where religion wasn't just part of life, but was life itself, looking appropriately pious was serious business. Religious appearance, that perfect balance of humility and devotion, was considered deeply attractive in medieval times, especially during religious festivals and holy days. Looking holy was the original influencer trend, except the followers were actual followers of Christ. The church influenced fashion and beauty more than any royal court ever could. Church leaders regularly issued guidelines about appropriate dress and appearance, condemning everything from pointed shoes considered devilish because they resembled demons' feet to excessive makeup, seen as deceptive and vain. During particularly holy times of year like Lent or Advent, everyone was expected to tone down their appearance to show proper reverence and spiritual focus. Church was the original fashion week, except instead of "who are you wearing?" it was "how little are you wearing to prove your humility?" Showing up to Easter services in bright colors before the appropriate time could actually result in public scolding from the parish priest. For women, religious beauty meant wearing more subdued colors, covering the hair completely in church, and wearing visible symbols of faith like crosses or prayer beads. The truly devout might dress in blues and whites, colors associated with the Virgin Mary, to signal their pious nature. Some women took dressing for church so seriously that they basically had two wardrobes, their regular clothes and their "I'm definitely going to heaven" outfits. Showing up to Mass in last week's outfit might get you side-eye from the local prayer circle. Records from medieval towns mention women saving for years to have a special church gown made, which was then carefully maintained and passed down through generations. While some practices might seem strange to us now, like intentionally receding your hairline or using lead-based face paint, they made perfect sense in their context. Just as our beauty trends today might look bizarre to future generations, medieval beauty reminds us that attractiveness is always shaped by culture, necessity, and available resources.